programs that serve children and families. And we are known for our graduate programs that prepare young scholars to seek faculty positions in higher education, and our Graduate International Studies certificate. Our department culture, I would say, is best described as an inclusive educational community where students are encouraged to work alongside faculty to learn how to conduct research, run programs, and develop skills to land positions in community programs and in higher education. Faculty provide high-touch mentoring to graduate students who often work in their research labs on projects that take them into community programs in families' homes and sometimes in international settings. We have an active graduate student organization that takes on special projects, and currently they're contributing to a series of trainings on diversity and inclusion. So these are just a few things that I wanted to let you know about our department. I will say that this department is my department in that I earned my master's degree here many, many years ago. I can say that it's as strong as ever, if not more so. And we really welcome your questions, your interests, and your follow-up once you leave this session today, because we really want to be able to answer all the questions that you have and show you around in as many ways as we can. So I'd like to turn this now back over to my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Thank you so much. I'm Julia Jekyll. So good to see you all here. And Mary Jane really gave this wonderful overview of who we are and what we are doing. And I just wanted to add a few priorities that I think is really guiding us all in our daily lives here. One is that we are really multidisciplinary, which means we are offering a multitude of opportunities to students as you come and learn and work with us and do your research. And the second one is that we are highly collaborative. I've joined the department about 5 years ago, coming from Germany, having been in Europe, and I can really say, having been around the world, I've never been to a more collaborative place. And it's wonderful to be here. This means that you as students, you're really at the heart of what we are doing. And we want to listen to you, just like Mary Jane said. We want to learn from you and with you. And this is also what we want to do in this session, because as you join CFS, like, we become part of your journey. And because we are so multidisciplinary, I think what really makes us special is that students have a chance to find their own niche, really finding what they are interested in and doing what they want to do as they spend time with us here in CFS. And that is most of what I wanted to share. We want this session to be open to hear from our former and current graduate students and to have time to answer your questions. With that, I'm giving it over to my colleague, Megan Haselschwert.
Thank you, Dr. Jekyll. So my last name has German ancestry, but we've been in this country a very long time and have completely lost touch of all of our German ancestry. So Dr. Jekyll can say my last name better than everybody else. So thank you. So I'm Megan Haselschwert. I'm a faculty member in Child and Family Studies. It's fun to see some of you from my current class, CFS 360. Welcome. What I wanted to just briefly share is kind of why family science, why developmental science, why child and family studies and early childhood education. So what makes us distinct in our particular department when thinking about applying to social science, other social science programs. So many of us actually have a lot of experience in psychology undergraduate degrees or social work degrees, other things that, and many of us found this field of child and family studies or human development and family studies either in graduate school or in our faculty positions. So a benefit of coming to our program for graduate school is that you have the opportunity, just like Dr. Jekyll was saying, around collaboration and multidisciplinary context. That means that you could have classes in the same department from someone trained in developmental psychology, clinical psychology, family science, early childhood education, social work, And so we all kind of found this field because we were really interested in human development, whether it's young children or aging couples, in context, whether that's in the context of their school, whether it's in the context of their family life, or in the context of in the mass incarceration system, or in the context of navigating opioid addiction in Appalachian region, or families in poverty. We are just really interested in kind of the surrounding context that influences human development and couple relationships and family life. And that's something that's really distinct and unique to our field. And it allows you to have a much broader exposure to our field. So my training's in human development and family science, so family studies, which actually comes from sociology. So you also have scholars that are trained to think more sociologically about the ways in which humans and families live and exist. Another strength to our department is that we really embrace and respect all different types of research methods, whether it's qualitative research, doing in-depth interviews, or ethnographic research, doing observations in international school contexts, doing quantitative studies with big, large longitudinal data sets that allow us to answer questions about people from even before they're born through adulthood, or collecting data using surveys. These are all different approaches that faculty members use that you would have the opportunity to learn from and to gain expertise that you could then carry into community settings, doing work with populations, or into research settings, doing your own research as a scholar. So these are some of the unique factors that really set us apart from other types of social sciences. And we'd be happy to come back to this at the end, but just like those who spoke before me have said, the goal really is to emphasize the experiences of those. We have 5 students that are, well, 2 current students, 3 individuals who have moved on from their either master's or PhD in our program, and so we want to introduce them, or we're going to let them introduce themselves, and we're going to let them kind of take over for the next chunk of time. And we have some prompts that we might ask, but this is an informal discussion where you can just hear from what it was like to be a graduate student in our program and how that's carried over into future and professional lives, because something that we often don't realize when we're applying to grad school is that the success of departments in placing people and helping people succeed in terms of getting jobs, and in terms of getting jobs in the kinds of places that you would want to be working in, is super important when you're making a decision on where you would want to go to grad school. Without further ado, I wish we could like pin 5 people, but maybe I'll say say your names and you can wave, and then you can kind of get a sense. And then once we all go silent, mute, that person who's talking will become more readily available. Yes, and Dr. Jekyll said, please use the chat function. We can respond as people are talking. But Wendy is a current student. Wendy, will you wave? Okay, we have Wendy. We have Tanner, who's another former student. Okay, great. We have Lauren, another former student. We have, sorry, Wendy and Tanner are current students. Lauren's former student. We have Megan Cheney. Where are you? There you are. Sorry, on my screen it's funny. And then we have Lisa. Oh, there you are. Found you. Okay. Well, why don't we start with our current students? So maybe Wendy will let you kick us off and tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll go from there. And I'm going to mute myself now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy McLean Cook. I'm a Jamaican in the department. I came in 2018, and it has been a ride that I've enjoyed. So I'm really going to start with talking about the general atmosphere of CFS. I know the colleagues will talk about the types of research that they've been involved in and how that has helped them to move forward. I have been involved in a number of research projects since I got here, and they go from research with fathers, the Gamo fathers in Ethiopia, to research with children in Jamaica, research having to do with partner support with African American couples, among other types of research that I've been involved in. But as I said, I'm going to talk about being in CFS and why I actually love being in CFS. And one of the things I think about CFS is that F. That F really means family. And the department has exemplified that F for me. when I came, I was really not anticipating the kind of atmosphere that I found in CFS. I was expecting competition. I wasn't expecting support and collaboration. And I'm glad my expectations were not met. Um, I feel really supported in the department. I feel supported by my head, by my professors, by the administrative support that we have in the department. I get the sense that there's always somebody who is going to help me find the kind of professional things that I need. They're interested in my development as a student. And I have people who are just always rooting to make sure that I succeed. I can't think of the number of times that people have said to me, Wendy, how can I help? How can I help you? I've had that question a number of times from our head. She's always like, how can I help? Now, for me, that's very important from where I come from, because I'm coming from someplace else. And I always like to know that there's somebody who's going to support me because I'm away from my family. So I am really happy to be in CFS. Sometimes I feel like I was meant to be here. Um, People always think I'm strange when I say I love the Jesse Harris building. Some people think it's quirky and so on, but for me, the Jesse Harris building is really intriguing. Um, I like to walk up to the door and see home economics written at the top of the door. There is something about it that I find so, welcoming in a sense, the sense of history that is there. So for me, CFS has been a great ride. I've enjoyed being here. I've enjoyed the people, and I know I'm in the right place. I think that's enough of me. There are other things, but I'll talk about them later.
All right, I am Tanner Kilpatrick, and I'm really excited to see several students that I've either worked with or maybe taught before and that you're interested in doing a graduate program, so that makes me really excited. I am from Texas, so like Wendy, I came into Tennessee and found a family in the CFS department as well, so I share that same idea with her. I was trying to think what I could say, because I think Wendy did a great job on saying what our department represents. I guess for me, my experience is I came in kind of having an idea of what I wanted to do research-wise. I had some interest, but I hadn't fully developed that yet. And so the department, the professors were really supportive in helping me figure out what that is. And so I got to work on several different projects with Dr. Heidi Souls and her Tennessee Dad project, and then Dr. Dolores Smith, who is no longer here, but she did research on bullying. And so, but then I finally found I guess what I consider like my calling or my research interest with Dr. Elizabeth Johnson, and looking at family member incarceration and parental incarceration and the impact of those things. So I would say that the department was really supportive in helping me figure that out, because it's kind of intimidating at first. You kind of have some ideas, but you may not know exactly what you want to do. But I think that the department and the other graduate students really helped me figure that out. So that's something that I wanted to share with you all. And then one of the prompts that they sent to us was, what piece of advice do you have? And I think it is what I was just talking about, that just knowing that it's okay if you don't have an understanding of what your research interest is, that it'll come to you. And you've got to kind of figure that out once you get into some projects and work with some people, but just having a general sense of what you want to do, but just know that you'll develop that as you go along. So that's all I have to share.
And I think that's a good point to point out. Megan, did you do a practicum also? Will you be able to speak to that? No, okay. There are options if you're seeking a master's degree to do either a practicum or a thesis or both. So we have had some students who knew they wanted to do work in community settings, but they also wanted to do a master's thesis, and so they did both, and then that kind of propelled them into more applied research opportunities. And so there is an option to do an in-depth practicum in a setting. A lot of our students choose a thesis, but a practicum is also very popular and important as well. So when we're talking about research and the topics, that's oftentimes the case. And whether it's research topic, things that you're interested in, or in a practicum setting. So for example, in my work at intimate partner violence, some students might know that they want to do that topic, but they want to do it in a practicum, so they might partner with the Knoxville Family Justice Center as opposed to doing a thesis. Or again, some people are particularly eager to get both experiences and may do both. So that's just kind of thinking about the transition to research projects. Megan, since you're then the next most recent graduate, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and say what you're doing now too?
Sure. I'm Megan, and I was in I did my master's at UT in the CFS department. I think 3 years ago I graduated. I currently work. My official title is a child development specialist at a lab school at a community college. In these crazy times, though, we have a lot of teaching staff and not as many kids, so they have pulled me out of the classroom to help coach and guide actually the director and associate director because of the unique experiences and knowledges I bring forward from my time at CFS.
And do you want to say anything? I know I sent them different prompts, and so it's kind of fluid, but anything about kind of what led you to CFS and kind of, so it sounds like that the experience there is kind of now put you in a position for promotion and having these additional experiences. But I'm curious a little bit about, for you and for others, how did you end up here, like in CFS or
Sure.
here, virtual here?
That feels like a long time ago, actually, and I will be honest, guys, I'm feeling a little emotional right now. I can't tell you to go to UT enough. I miss it so dearly, and I'm trying to convince my husband to move back so I can do a PhD there. But what led me there, I studied psychology in undergrad, and I worked at a daycare, and I really love development. I love children, but I knew I didn't want to be a teacher. So somehow I found child and family studies and human development family studies. And I honestly feel like it was a gut move to go to UT, but it was the best decision I've ever made. When I got there, I was very clueless. Like Tanner mentioned, he was a little clueless. I was very clueless what I wanted to do. No research interest. I felt very lost at the time, and the professors there did a great job at taking me in and guiding me. I studied, Mary Jane's telling me to tell everyone about my research, which I will, because I study a very unique area. I studied toddler risky play, and it was, nobody studies that. It's very understudied. If you read my lit review, you'll see it's very understudied, which is a huge burden for a committee member to take you on as their mentor, because now they're learning alongside you. So not only do they have their own jobs, their own research, but now they have to learn along with you. And not once did my committee make me feel, guilty about that in any way. They were enthusiastic to learn with me. They were excited to read my lengthy papers and all of my presentations, and I had a blast doing it. They challenged me every day, and that's, I think, of all the things that I have brought with me from the CFS department, is how to think critically about all problems in life, both personally and professionally. All the classes made me stretch my mind. They made me take on different perspectives. I was challenged daily, and it was a great challenge. And I think now that's what my director has seen in me, and that's why she's pulled me out of a classroom to have this awesome opportunity to work alongside her and help move the school I'm at along to become a school. Like, I had a assistantship at the ELC at UT, and that was a phenomenal experience, and I am a 10 times better professional now because of it.
Thank you, Megan. That's wonderful. Lauren, why don't we hear from you?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Bader, and I'm a current research fellow at the Institute for Advanced Study in Toulouse, France, which, like UTK CFS, is another multidisciplinary institute. What I loved most about UTK CFS was the freedom I had to do the research I wanted and the guidance that I had to do that work. I was able to spend a couple summers in Ethiopia studying early social emotional development and parenting. Um, so not only did I have the social support and the emotional support to do this research, but also financial support from a little bit of financial support from the department, which made the work really easy to do. I was able to fund my research to actually go to Ethiopia. What I also loved about UTK CFS was working in an office with other graduate students. So every morning I was really excited to get to the building because I knew that when I walked in, I would see familiar faces like Lisa, and they made the workday go by so much quicker and made it so much more enjoyable. And that's actually something I really missed from graduate school, is being able to walk into an office with your friends and colleagues. So those are the two things I really enjoyed most about UTK CFS. It's a very supportive environment as well as a very community-oriented department.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do in your role now?
Mm-hmm. So I'm continuing my research that I started while in graduate school at the University of Tennessee. Most recently, I went to Ethiopia about a year ago, just building off the work that I started, studying early social emotional development, and that's expanded now to more of a focus on and it's expanded to a focus on prepartum and postpartum maternal mental health and how that's related to mothers' interactions with their infants. So that's really what I've been focusing on since leaving UTK CFS.
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing. So I'm the advisor for the graduate student organization, and so I can say a little bit about, obviously these are unique circumstances. Instead of being together, we're here virtually, which in some ways may be a benefit for those of you who are not, local to Knoxville or in this particular place. But one thing that the graduate student organizations does is trying to kind of create and maintain community. So through GroupMe and through now starting some virtual trivia nights and kind of social gatherings, and then maybe moving into some kind of socially distanced gatherings for people that feel comfortable in doing so. But the department's really trying, the students are trying to kind of have student-led approaches to interacting with one another, because of course the things that many of us remember and love from our graduate experiences are a bit more challenging right now. So the students are definitely coming up with ways to try to connect socially outside of schoolwork. And we of
Yes.
course would be happy to say more about that too.
Sorry, and I just also wanted to add that we as faculty, we are trying to accommodate the current situation. And for example, in our labs or research teams, depending on what we are doing and how big our teams are, we may have weekly meetings or more often one-on-one meetings too, to really come together and share where everyone is at, what we are doing. And I think we have been really, really successful in continuing our research in different ways, even during these times. Like right now, for example, I usually collect a lot of data at the hospital, at East Tennessee Children's Hospital. I see Kaylin in our group here, like she's doing that work with our team. And it's not possible. Since March, we're not allowed to go and we're not allowed to recruit, but we found different ways to still collect data and to continue our work. And I think that will probably continue to be the case in spring, and we'll constantly adapt to how the situation changes.
Absolutely. Flexibility, it's the story of all of our experiences right now. Okay, well, we'll have Lisa share, our final panelist, about her different pathways and what she does now.
Hi everyone, I'm Lisa. I recognize a couple faces on here. I didn't come from as far away as Jamaica, but I am from Philly, and so moving down south was a huge decision for me at the time. And, I came from a developmental psych background. I have my bachelor's and master's in developmental psych, and I applied to a number of different types of programs for my doctorate. And I agree, now I'm forgetting who said it. I think it was Wendy. But when I came down and visited, it was December before I was graduating with my master's. And I walked into Jesse Harris, and it sounds funny, but it just felt like home. I got to meet with the faculty. I got to meet with the current students, which I think is such a big indicator of the culture of a department, is actually getting to talk to the grad students, because I can tell you grad students will be honest with you, especially current grad students. Right now, I'm actually a professor at Carson Newman. I graduated from UT's doctoral program back in 2016, so it has been a little while, although you probably wouldn't know it at UT because Mary Jane can attest I drop in a lot. They can't get rid of me. And Mary Jane has been really my primary mentor throughout graduate school, and I think she's now just assumed the role of my lifelong mentor, because I still come to her for advice, for help, way more than I should, but she has been so supportive. And I think that that's just, with her being the chair of the department, really really one of those signs of how faculty are supporting their students at UT. That's definitely something that I was looking for in a program. I wanted a program that was going to be individualized to my needs and my interests. I definitely didn't want a one-size-fits-all program. And so I'm confident that I made the right decision with UT. And I also have to echo Lauren's comment about your cohort, about your fellow graduate students. Lauren's actually one of my best friends still to this day, as are several other people who I went through the program with. And I mean, you bond in ways that you cannot imagine when you work together day in, day out. Lauren and I worked together for 4 years in the EERC, and those are some of my fondest memories of graduate school. I was also on the graduate student organization. I'm sure it has changed quite a bit since my day, but something that's really cool is just the amount of responsibility, if you want, that you're able to take on at UT. So I don't know if you're still all involved in Quint State, but basically it's a graduate student conference put on by graduate students. So we were able to actually create a conference with, some of our closest friends and colleagues. And that was just something that I never thought I would have the chance to do. So it's those little things that maybe aren't on the website, or that you don't always hear in an orientation, that I felt like really gave me a leg up and really prepared me to be faculty beyond UT and in my career today. My research at UT really focused on development in the preschool classroom. So I was really interested in language and self-regulated learning. And kind of similar to Megan, this wasn't really something that somebody was directly looking at UT currently. And Mary Jane, thank you so much. I can never thank you enough. Really dug down into the literature and gave me the best support she could, being the chair of my doctoral committee. Sure, I'm forgetting to say things. Something else, okay. Another example I would say of just the lifelong relationships that have been built throughout UT is every year at NCFR, which is a National Conference of Family Relations teaching opportunity. I'm sorry, Mary Jane. Teaching opportunity at UT. Thank you. So there were a lot of opportunities to teach different classes as a graduate student. I taught research methods and statistics. I know Lauren taught diversity, maybe another class. Tanner, I know you've taught a number of classes. I can't think of what they are off the top of my head. And so for students who are wanting to take on a teaching position, which I found myself doing after graduation, I definitely felt pretty prepared to step into that role of faculty outside of the institution, because at UT we were really given that full responsibility of a class. And I know, coming from another department during my master's, that that's not always the case, that students get that hands-on teaching opportunity.
Thank you, Lisa. I think that's a great point. So yeah, I'm guessing if some of you are earlier in your journey, the idea of then stepping into a college classroom might seem quite shocking. I remember it was for me when I first got to grad school, and my first year I was a TA for a 400 level back when we used to have more discussion sections, and I remember thinking, like, do they know that I'm a year older than them? Like, I'm doing my best here. But it really is a great opportunity to gain more skills in teaching. And we have a program where there's a required class on college teaching that students take, and then you shadow a faculty member, sometimes for more than one semester, but working closely with the faculty member during that time, and then when you start to independently teach, and that's after your master's degree if you stayed for your PhD, and that's been a really great experience. One of my doctoral students has been teaching after that mentorship, and then one is a TA right now, and she'll be transitioning to independent teaching in the spring. And so it's a really great opportunity to get to have that teaching experience while you're also working collaboratively with faculty members to gain new skills. I've learned so much, especially with the shift to online teaching, from one of my doctoral students who taught online this summer. Much of my success this semester has been from what I've learned from her. So this is really a mutually beneficial relationship. But we do really work hard to try to prepare students in the PhD program after the master's to be able to independently teach.
And adding to that, I want to say I've learned so much from Dr. Hazelschwert, for example. So the message is that we are collaborative, not just in research, but in any ways in CFS. And I think I can speak for our students too when I say whenever you start teaching a new class, it's not that you're facing a new prep and have to bring everything together by ourselves. I think everyone is really collaborative with regard to sharing syllabi, sharing materials, potential readings, and trying to give tips and input when it comes to designing a new class in the very best way. And that makes it also a good experience for students taking on classes fully independently.
So we thought this would be a good point. We have some other questions that we can push them further on, but this would be a great time for anybody, if you have any questions that you want to ask, out loud or in the chat, that we can pause for a couple moments for any questions for our panelists. And remember, if you have a question, somebody else probably does too.
Exactly, and that's a good cue while you're collecting your questions. I wanted to say, and I think it came up before, like not all the information and the critical pieces may be on the website, but we are currently really still in the process of revising our website. A few things are on there that are new, a few things are still not 100% updated. So we'll speak to that in a little bit in more detail. But what I want to say is that the questions you will be asking today will also help us to put meaningful information on the website. So we really want this to be like a back and forth, and whatever is on your minds that matters to you today as you're preparing to apply may matter to most other applicants too. So please don't be shy, ask your questions.
I could ask a question. So for students who have already completed a master's degree who are coming in just for the PhD, how does that fit into the program plan for the doctoral degree? Do you find that students who have received master's degrees at other institutions tend to have a lot of repeat classes that they have to take? Do you end up taking, all the theory classes again? How does that fit into the I think it's 72, 73 credit hours for a PhD?
That is a great question. And without going too much into detail, of course, our classes, our courses are meant to give you not just theory, but also the method skill that you need to really answer your research questions in the best possible way and be prepared in the best possible way. So I wouldn't say if you had something during your master's degree, it's necessarily something you should skip during your PhD. But there are always options to make a request with the graduate committee to consider in agreement with your committee to waive a class. And it's really an individual situation for each student. I see Dr. Moran nodding. I hope what I'm saying is correct. Like, I took up the role of Director of Graduate Studies in August, so I'm still asking myself while talking, is this correct what I'm saying? I hope it is. Yes. So yes and no in direct response to your question.
I think I can comment on that as well as someone who came directly into the PhD program. I think it also depends on whether or not you're coming from an allied discipline or you're new to CFS entirely. I came from social work, and I think did have family background, did have some of the skills I needed, but I didn't necessarily have the content that I needed. So whereas I came with a number of skills, I still didn't have the CFS content that I needed. So truth be told, I didn't do any course that I didn't need, or I didn't find any course that I didn't need. I needed them all because I was coming into CFS. And I don't know if you would be coming from maybe an human development program, I'm not sure, but I did need my courses.
I transferred, or not transferred, but I did my master's in psychology. So it was a little bit different, definitely more similar than some other disciplines. I think I was allowed to transfer several courses in as electives, and I think this might have changed since then, but there was an option to sub the stat classes that I had taken, and I made the decision to retake stat classes, and I think it was one of the best decisions that I've taken. I don't think you can have enough of some of those foundational statistics classes.
Thank you both so much. We do have a question in the chat about the pre-K to 3 program. I would like to ask this question to Dr. Moran because she's more familiar with the teacher licensure program. What is the deadline to apply to the pre-K to 3 master's program?
The pre-K 3 master's program is pretty unique in that we admit to that program on the undergraduate level because it's what's called a 5th year program, which means that you get your bachelor's degree in 4 years. And in the 5th year, you are full-time for 12 months at least, getting your master's level content, as well as being in the public schools for a year-long internship. So there is no time frame that would prevent you from applying, but I would suggest that you contact me and I will put you in touch with some of our frontline advisors, because part of what will happen is it will depend kind of what I think both Wendy and Lisa were saying. It depends on your undergraduate program, just to depend on how many of the graduate classes you'll be prepared to take. And it's hard for me to know whether or not you could do the master's degree in a 12-month to 15-month time. It might take you 2 years, which is traditional for master's programs. But this program kind of prepares you as an undergraduate in some of the content, like Wendy was saying, so that when you get into your master's program, you don't have as much content to take. You can spend a lot of your time also in the classroom teaching. So it's a unique program, but I would be very welcome. You can find my email address online. I can put it in the chat in a moment. You can email me and I'll put you in touch with some of our frontline people. And if you could send a transcript, even if it's an unofficial one, that would be helpful too. We could look at that and give you some idea. And I don't know, Charles, maybe, I don't know if you are willing or open to commenting on this or not, but you are coming into our program, I think, and you are a teacher. You might have some comments to make. You've taken some of our graduate classes already. I'll toss the ball to you if you would like to catch it. If you don't have to.
Thank you, Dr. Moran. Yes, so I'm a teacher. I've been teaching for about 10 years now. I teach second grade, and I come from an elementary education, early childhood background. I was a little late because I was leaving school because we're opening schools that are in Nashville tomorrow. So I'll be seeing my students for the first time tomorrow. But I did take 2 classes this summer. One of my, I am in the process of applying. And I'm sort of like what Wendy was saying, and someone else, I just saw a comment that was posted, that I feel like I didn't have enough content, but I have the early childhood part, but just not enough of the family, child and family content. And so I did take 2 classes because it had been so long since I've done my master's. And I had a really wonderful time. I learned a lot this past summer. I took a survey of research in early childhood, and I took the human development course. And so I learned a lot. I did. I learned a lot. And that's one of the reasons why I'm applying for the program, because they were very supportive of just my needs, the teachers that I had, the professors I had this past summer. I hope I was helpful.
You were. That was my question. So I know that there's like 6 classes that we have to take, and I was going to do 3 this coming up summer, and then 3 the following summer is what I've been told I could do. So that was my plan, but I wasn't sure when I actually needed to apply to the program. I'm currently in 470. So Mary Jane, I've seen you over the summer when you were talking to the 470 class. That's my class. So I'm in that part right now.
And that was really my concern why I applied this summer as a special student, because it had been so long, and I had been looking at the program last year. I even visited on campus, and I said, I talked to my mom. I was like, she's like, why don't you take class? I was like, I should take and see, how this goes. And so I applied over the summer as a special student, and I was admitted for the summer. But I'm glad I did. It brought a lot of clarity for, just to what I want to do, why I want to do it. And it just, it was a great decision. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I took those 2 classes this summer.
I just want to pop in real quick to the 3 classes that I think everybody's talking about, the core classes that you have to take, the developmental theory class, family theory, and diversity. That's right? So I, having a background in developmental psych, didn't think that I should have to take that developmental theory class. I remember thinking I already know everything about that. I took it my very first semester at UT with Heidi Stoltz, and I can honestly say I learned more in that class than any other class that I've ever taken. And so I thought I knew everything there was to know about theory, and I still learned so much more being in that class.
Jake had a question that I thought was a great question in the chat. What is the thread that connects so many varied faculty research interests? Being so collaborative, does that make the curriculum more diverse? Yes, it definitely makes the curriculum more diverse, but I'll share, maybe we could each kind of share some of the examples from our work. So I study intimate partner violence. I look at the ways in which exposure to family violence impacts youth, both from a risk and resilience standpoint. And I'm predominantly a qualitative researcher, so I tend to do mostly in-depth interviews, though I also do quite a bit of online data collection and surveys lately. But I had an opportunity to join with a social work faculty member on an intervention-based project where, if funded, we would be recruiting women and children who are entering into domestic violence shelters and pairing them with a family or peer navigator, someone who's been through a similar situation, who's been trained and can help them help promote early intervention for their children into mental health related services. And through this collaboration, we were thinking, okay, we really need somebody with clinical psychology background, because we need to know what are the best answers that we should be asking of parents to assess how they're doing. And I immediately thought, like, oh, that's exactly what Yulia, Dr. Jekyll knows this information. So Dr. Jekyll, even though her research is different from mine, she could offer this clinical perspective on the appropriate measures, and she's been collaborating in many other incredibly beneficial ways. And so that's one way, kind of finding our interest in what we're looking for. Another example is that my colleague, Dr. Amy Rauer, who is Wendy's major professor, she studies happy older couples, which is basically the opposite of my research area. But Amy started to and she's a quantitative, really great statistician and quantitative researcher, and she started having more and more grad students when that have been interested in qualitative interviews and qualitative data. And so I began collaborating with Amy to help support her and her students in gaining the qualitative research skills that they needed. And so I have on my, resume, or the academic version, curriculum vitae, papers that say things about compassionate love, which is an interesting mix within intimate partner violence and family violence and child maltreatment. But that's an example of some collaborations. But maybe we'll tag in Jeremy, who is a very brand new faculty member. Dr. Cantor just joined us, and he has some existing collaborations and new ones on the way already on campus. So maybe he can say a little bit about his new involvement in the department and his work too.
Sure. So as Megan said, I'm Jeremy Cantor. I'm a new faculty member here. So my research primarily focuses on romantic relationships across the life course, understanding how they develop, how couples maintain their satisfaction over time, or how it deteriorates. And so one thing I love about this department is, as soon as I really got to campus, it was apparent that there were so many faculty, not only within the department, but across the campus, that you can collaborate with. So right now I'm working with a faculty member in sociology, and we're trying to actually get some funding right now to do some secondary data analysis, kind of combining both of our strengths of some of my quantitative methods and some of his knowledge on structural risks that are influence families. And even within not meeting in person, but just virtual meetings, we've had this ability to kind of connect, because I think of our multidisciplinary background here in CFS. I think it really is a strength, and it just kind of what everyone has said, it really does tie everything together, where we're really interested in not only just one aspect of how families and children develop, but taking this really comprehensive approach, which kind of reflects on our collaborations we have, again, across disciplines within the department and across campus.
I'd like just to piggyback on what Jeremy just said about his particular partnership and what everyone else has said thus far. We often say when we get this question, it's not an easy question to answer, but this response is going to sound pretty simplistic. All of us study development in context. We don't study development. We don't study people outside of their whatever spaces or places that we're interested in. And not just spaces and places, but relationships, whatever the context is. So that's different in my field, in early care and education, in professional development of teachers, because sometimes in education, you're taught from a curriculum and instruction perspective, where you're taught how to teach a subject or how to teach how to write. But for me, when I work with teachers, and I've worked with a cohort of teachers for 10 years who work in low-income project areas, primarily young Black children, children of color. Many of my colleagues are also women of color. I don't teach them how to teach reading from a book that might be what you would use in an urban, high-income urban setting, first grade. We take what's going on in those children's lives right then and work with them to talk about and read about and write about what they know. So development in context, I think, is kind of the short phrase that ties us all together. I don't know if that helps.
I think that's great. I was just going to also add the idea of risk and resilience. Most of us have this idea that our different contexts create some risks, and they also give opportunities for resilience. And a lot of us have that thread that kind of runs throughout of emphasizing strength-based approaches and acknowledging risk and not minimizing it, but acknowledging resilience as well. Megan Cheney, you had a comment in here. Do you want to jump into about how the faculty diversity of content impacted you?
I would love to do that. So during my thesis work, when I'm studying this area of toddler risky play that none of my committee members did, having their different backgrounds, I had Julia Yackel, who for me, I valued her developmental background. For Mary Jane, I valued her teaching background. I also pulled Robin Brookshire, who is the director of the Early Learning Center. And then I pulled a professor from kinesiology, None of them explicitly studied risky play, especially toddlerhood, but what it allowed me to do in my work was I had this very well-rounded perspective from all of my faculty members, so that they could challenge me in ways that maybe I wouldn't have challenged myself. They made me think outside the box, and something when I'm drowning in risky play research, something seems super obvious to me, but having these 4 committee chairs come in with their learning alongside me, they would stop me and be like, well, maybe it's not as obvious as you think it is. And so I think that my thesis in the end was better because of the diverse range of interests that I had. And then I want to add to that in the classroom setting and curriculum, I think that the diverse range of interest is what really brings out the critical thinkers in the CFS department. I think when all of these professors are giving you content from all these different areas that they study, it really, it changes your perspective and it makes you think very critically. And so now as I'm an infant toddler teacher, but I apply in all of my classes, even my research classes, I am applying constantly, what I have learned from these different backgrounds, things that I never thought I'd apply to infants and toddlers, I'm now bringing forward. So I think it's a huge asset to the department.
Just a very quick comment as well. Just to say that the collaborations don't only exist in the department. We get to do the collaborations outside of the department. So the African American couples project that I told you about earlier that I'm involved in, that's actually with kinesiology. So how did I get there? I work with Dr. Rauer. She studies romantic relationships. Dr. Hornbuckle, who is the other professor on the project, she's in kinesiology. But they're both quantitative people, and I am working on my qualification to be a qualitative methodologist. So I am actually on that project because they need my qualitative skills. And so I've been able to contribute to the project in that way. And they need my qualitative skills because of COVID, because the project got moved to online. It was an exercise program. And so people now the project had to be moved online, and people were exercising in their homes. And they wanted to talk to them about what that was like for them, the participants, that is. And so that's how I have ended up in that project. But I'm also on another project with social work. And so you're not only working within the department in terms of doing multidisciplinary work, you're doing work that's outside of the department with other departments and colleges that you really would not have worked with before.
I'm so sorry.
Sorry, go on, Lisa.
I was just going to say too, not only do those collaborations occur during your graduate career, but even beyond graduation, I know a lot of us are still working with faculty at UT. I am still collaborating with Heidi Stoltz, and we actually didn't really even work together while I was in graduate school, but I was her project coordinator for the Tennessee Dad Project the year after I graduated. And so after working with her on that project, I know Tanner was on that project for a while too, we have still been collaborating, publishing papers, and presenting at NCFR every year. So a lot of these collaborations.
I think her internet.
Come back, Lisa.
Yeah.
No, can you not hear me?
Now again.
Did you hear anything I said?
A lot of those projects continue after that.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. So you can continue to collaborate. I think that's just another example of UT, of the department, providing for their graduate students long after they graduate.
Thank you so much. I think it's just amazing what you're sharing. And although we're nearing the proposed end time, I want to say 2 more things. And I hope that we can continue a little bit over time. One thing with regard to development in context, so true. What I also wanted to say is when it comes to especially collaborations, many of us perceive development on different levels too. Like development can be on the molecular level, looking at the physiological, looking at the brain. For example, our research team is collaborating with Aaron Buss in psychology, who's doing brain imaging, and we're taking that into homes. We're also looking at development at like the public health level or education systems level, for example. So it's not like it is the context, but it's also the different levels, with perceiving development as being in a constant feedback loop with environmental influences, with the resources we have, and so on. And this feeds into how we teach and the content we offer in classes too. With that being said, before the first of you start to sign off, there's one question I really wanted to pose to our panelists. And that is because this is a session for prospective applicants. So if you think back to the time when you were preparing to apply to different programs, getting your materials ready, thinking about what to write in your letters of intent, thinking about your decision process, where to apply, what to do, what is it that you want to give everyone currently here on their way? What is it that you think you can share from that time?
Yulia, do you mind repeating the first part again? I have to jump out because I have another meeting soon, but I want to make sure that I answer your question before I do.
When you think back to the time when you applied for graduate school, what do you remember? What was most critical? What would you like to share with the group?
I think what was most critical for me is I found what y'all are doing right now, meeting with faculty and the graduate students. I actually came in for a visit from Texas and got to meet with people, and that was really helpful in informing my decision to choose this department. So that's what I found most helpful for me personally.
I agree with Tanner. I know that some of you are already at UT and probably have a good feel for the department. If not, especially if you haven't been on campus when things are a little bit more normal, I strongly suggest visiting if you can. If you can't in person, setting up times to meet with faculty over Zoom, because I know that they are more than happy to meet with you, but having those one-on-one conversations can allow you to see if it's going to be a good fit. And you might have a feeling about working with a certain faculty member. I know I already mentioned this, but the other component is getting to talk with current graduate students and just seeing what a typical day in their life looks like in the program.
I agree with that with Lisa and Tanner. Super important to go visit. When we say that in the CFS department, it's a family, it really is. I mean, there are times like I still contact Mary Jane when I'm struggling with life decisions, and even my mom will say, well, have you talked to Mary Jane? They really do. So meet with the professors. They're happy. You might feel slightly awkward the first time. I for sure did, but get to know them. Second, and I think maybe I'm reminding myself of this right now, don't put too much pressure on the letter of intent. It's obviously important to have goals and to go for them, but if you're a little lost right now, it's okay. You have a lot of years to figure it out. As long as you can enter the department with a mindset of being willing to learn and to take guidance and to take coaching, I think that's really what the department looks for, and I promise they'll set you up for success.
Also, I would say, kind of bouncing off what Megan said, is don't worry so much about some of the little details, like the number of classes you have to take, because you're going to want to take all of them. They're all really important. Yeah, so just meet with if you can, meet with the faculty and current students to get a feel for the department before you apply.
Well, since I didn't come from here and didn't have that opportunity, it's very strange. I think what made my decision was Dr. Stoll's response to an email I had sent. She was working with fathers, and I was very interested in fatherhood. So I emailed her, and I had been emailing professors from all sorts of universities that I was interested in. And her email clinched it for me. in the sense that it was just such a lovely email, and an email that made me feel like I didn't have to have everything worked out before I got here. And so that's what made the difference for me. I can't say anything about knowing anything or anything like that. When I saw my Big Orange Family letter, that was exciting for me because I liked the idea of being welcome to the Big Orange Family. So that was kind of thrilling. But I think Dr. Stoll's email was what made the difference for me in terms of, you know, the fact that she did respond, and that she responded in a way that made me feel like I didn't have to have everything worked out before I could come here.
Thank you, Wendy. And in a way, perhaps your situation is very similar to what most of us are facing right now due to the COVID crisis. So I really want to repeat, because we don't have the time to go over the technicalities of the application process. Dr. Haselschwert had prepared this wonderful document that she shared in the chat, which is very helpful. This information is also on the websites. Thank you for sharing again. And our doors are really always open. I try to respond to emails within a day. I think most of our colleagues, we are getting like 100 emails a day, but we're trying to stay on top of it, and we want to answer your questions. So especially if you have specific questions about the application process, about our procedures, please reach out, please email us. And I've also, like, some of you who are still here, we've met one-on-one, we've talked through questions. I'm always happy to make time. Please do reach out. We're here and we really want to make this a good experience through this application process. Thank you, everyone.
If you have any individualized questions, we can hang around. That's just fine. For those of you who are ready to head off, that's also fine. So thank you all for coming. This is really nice to see and meet some of you.
Thank you, Megan.
Kind of backtracking, but I'm a first generation college student, so I'm trying to figure everything out. I came to college and I had no idea what the heck I wanted to do, so I'm still working on that. I never thought of graduate school as a thing. I kind of just came to college because that's what everyone did. But now that I'm found something that I'm interested in and want to pursue, I'm more interested in applying to graduate school and things like that. But of course, it's a huge financial burden. So I'm just kind of wondering what the benefits are of going to graduate school, specifically in this program, because, you know, some programs you kind of have to have your master's to be successful in or to reach that higher level. But I feel like with this program, I don't really know what all I'd be getting from that almost, and how it would benefit me in my career and future endeavor.
That is a wonderful question. I feel like when I'm trying to think about how to answer, it's a multi-faceted, complex answer. So I'm asking my colleagues to join in once I've given a few thoughts. I assume you're talking about the master's program. So we offer two different tracks. One would be the teacher licensure degree with the master's degree, which I would think is pretty clear in what it offers, thinking about licensure, teaching, and also having a leadership pathway towards education. When it comes to the research and application track, there are many different options. And one thing I want to share is that we recently looked at our former graduates, and really we're like staying in touch and tracking where they are today. And we found that the master's degree has prepared them for very successful careers in different fields, in different types of positions. Some may go on to get their PhD to stay in higher education, and others may go into professional positions. And with that, I'm looking at two panel members who are still here. So I'm thinking, before I talk more about where you can go, maybe Megan and Lisa want to share a little more about professional application. And I also see Lauren is still here. Sorry, the chat box is on top of the pictures. But there are really many different professionally applied options.
So I probably have a pretty traditional outcome being a professor now, but that definitely was, I did not know that that's what I wanted to do when I was in undergrad. I really liked learning. I wanted, you know, a degree in psychology. So I did my master's in psychology, and it wasn't until I was actually in front of a classroom that I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to teach. I don't have as much hands-on experience with coming out with a master's in CFS, but one of my best friends who graduated from this program, it provided her a lot of flexibility. So she initially, Johnsy, Mary Jane, you know her, she initially was a school counselor in, gosh, now I'm forgetting, in South Carolina. And then it's a government funded program, the grant ended. And so, you know, she was really upset when that program ended. Then she ended up working for Clemson, initially for a STEM program advising young women as well as students of color, trying to get more diversity in the STEM program. And now she's actually an advisor for study abroad at Clemson. And so I just think that this is, you know, all of the different things that she's done just over a short period of time with a master's degree in this program. It provided her a lot of expertise, but at the same time, a lot of flexibility that she can kind of ebb and flow with the different career paths that her life is taking her through.
Megan, would you like to add?
Yeah, I'm not a first generation college student, but I definitely did not think grad school was something I would do. So I can relate to you on that. I remember applying just because I was a psychology student, and a bachelor's in psychology doesn't get you anywhere. So I had no idea what to do. So I just started applying to programs. So I went in pretty blindly. CFS does a great job at getting financial aid through assistantships. So definitely look into that, because that takes away any financial burden. And if you're getting your education for free, it can't go to waste. I apply mine every day. Before I graduated, I took a job as an assistant director. So I took a leadership position. Applied, and so I was applying, you know, but I went the research track, which actually was super beneficial, because there's this huge gap between practice and research, and so I felt like I was making a difference by helping to bridge that gap. I learned pretty quickly that I missed working with kids, so when we moved to Illinois, I went back down to a infant toddler teacher, and I love it. And again, applying my research all the time, every day, to the point that they took me out of the infant toddler position back to leadership, so that I can apply my research even more. So I really, if you look into the financial aid, if you can get an assistantship, it's not going to be a waste to go to school, because you can always apply more knowledge and you can always keep growing.
I will say too, real quick, assistantships are common for doctoral programs. They are very hard to come across for master's programs, and UT does a really good job trying to support their master's students as best they can through those assistantships.
Thank you, Lisa. And I don't want to say too much here, like information is on the website, and I'm really happy also to meet one-on-one. We are over time already, but we have been very successful on the graduate committee and in the department the past few years to increase our standard amounts for assistantships, and also to apply for our students for really competitive additional fellowships and other awards. So I think we can honestly say that we are doing a really good job to get our students well funded and to try to help them through their graduate studies without having to take out more loans.
And just to say that the department is really fantastic at doing the work for you when it comes to finding finances for you. So sometimes it isn't, you don't really need to worry about it. They make sure that you're okay.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so if you had an assistantship, that would mean that you would have a tuition waiver. So that would be covered, so you wouldn't be paying tuition, and then the assistantship is like additional money on top of that that you would be, so you'd be paid for assisting with a research project or a teaching assistantship. So assistantships come with a waiver, so then you wouldn't be paying tuition on top of it, and you'd be given an amount of money that, you know, depending on your threshold for cost of living, like graduate student assistantships don't pay for fancy vacations by any means, but they do help you to not need too much additional loans, and for some to not need any additional loans. And then there's opportunities also to apply that the department applies for and that students can apply for additional kind of top off funds. But that's that key piece there of like the tuition waiver coming with an assistantship.
Yep. So,
and that makes it less burdensome to imagine paying, you know, $10,000, $20,000 a year for a master's program. That's a different kind of pros and cons versus thinking of tuition being covered when you know, especially like for people that make the deadline of the January 1st deadline, then you're put into priority if you're accepted for those assistantship positions. And it, like they're saying, it's pretty uncommon to get an assistantship for a master's only program. It's not as uncommon. You typically have a tuition waiver for a master's to PhD, but for students that have masters, and our success in being able to offer that is more unusual when funds are available. And I know Yulia is much more nervous about, like, you know, because it's always like, you know, when funds are available, we've always had the success, but, you know, who knows? Who would have thought that we'd have a pandemic this time next year? But the department works really hard to help offset some of those financial burdens, so you wouldn't be leaving with an additional tens of thousands of dollars of debt heading into your profession.
Yes, and like it's more about wanting to say these are group decisions because we are a collaborative department. So it is a decision usually that is discussed and shared and made on the grading committee level, which is 4 or 5 faculty members who make that decision together. But in the end, the final decision is Dr. Moran's. So that is why I'm always really cautious to give exact amounts or like very detailed information about what we are going to offer, because in the end, a lot of the decisions are made by the department head. And although Dr. Moran has left now, all I want to say is like, she's so awesome. And she has been wonderful for our department. And I see everyone nod, and we couldn't be in a better place.
Okay. And Kendall, I'd be happy to continue talking about this with you more. Kendall's in my class, and I know that you are also in close contact with Amanda Capanola from class, and you know she can speak from the first gen student. And we have first gen faculty members, we have first gen graduate students. That is not an uncommon experience in our department. But we'd be more than happy to continue those conversations too. And then the more useful technical information Dr. Yakel can provide.
Oh yeah, but I'm happy to give any information. And really to say, we've worked with Amanda Capanola to put information on our websites that is honest and clear, because like it's important to differentiate between tuition and fees and what actually is being funded and what may still remain, especially for first generation students. So we are really trying to be as transparent as we can be.
Thank you guys so much. I will definitely probably be in touch with a million more questions, I'm sure. But this was really helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Bye, Kendall. Or you can hang around for Emily's questions. Emily, do you have some questions? You're unmuted, but I can't hear you.
Okay.
Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay. So my question was just like, I know Dr. Connor and I are really close because I'm in her culture class. Hey, but like what, like, I don't know how to describe it. So you got your master's in psychology, right? Okay. But were you a CFS major?
I did not get my CFS degree until the doctoral program. So my undergrad and my master's are in psychology.
Okay. Cause I'm a CFS major right now, and I can't decide if I want to do my master's route in like social work, kind of like what Wendy was doing before, or if I want to do like CFS. And so I was wondering, like, what are the main differences, really? Sorry to keep you all on time. I'm sorry. It's like 7:20.
Oh, no. Don't apologize.
No worries.
Maybe Wendy, I think you're most equipped to handle that one.
So your undergrad is CFS?
Yes, ma'am.
And you're thinking about doing a master's in social work?
Either social work or CFS, yeah.
Or CFS. All right. Now you have me thinking because I've got to scroll through my mind. There are advantages to having to doing both. I think it depends on your goal, your long-term goal. For me, social work was very important to me because it enabled me to have the kind of thinking that I'm able to display. Because in social work, when I think about things, primarily what we do is problem solving. So almost everything you do is centered on solving some sort of problem. So you need a particular kind of mindset to be able to do that all the time. I think that helped me a lot when I moved over into CFS. So there are some, because CFS is focused on development in context, there are some of the kind of, and I'm speaking from my own experience, some of the micro level skills that I got in social work that I didn't get in CFS. But then again, I didn't do an undergrad CFS degree, so I don't know in totality what you actually get there. And so for me, I think the social work also set me up to be pretty versatile. And there are other things too. You're really asking me a terrible question because I don't want to. I think they're complementary. And I wouldn't want to choose between them. Fortunately for me, I don't because I've got both. But I think there's something to be said for social work training.
Right.
At the same time, I do think so. And there's something to be said for CFS training. So I think do you have an idea of what you want to do?
Right.
That's the
So yeah, I'm working right now. It's called New Hope Children's Advocacy Center. So I'm kind of getting a lot of the CFS, I'm using my background with like the development, like I'm recognizing that kind of stuff. But then I'm also like really interested, not like in DCS, but just like kind of the like social work kind of background that goes along with that. So I just really it's such a hard decision in my mind of like if I want to go this way.
Yeah, and the thing is that there are concentrations in advocacy in social work. So one of the things I think that could be different is that with social work, there are many areas of specialization, multiple areas of specialization. So you can specialize in law, you can specialize in advocacy, you can specialize in social work in schools, so there are multiple areas of you can specialize in sports in social work. So there's when you come to your master's, you choose sports as opposed to something else. So we're multidisciplinary, yes. But if you're looking to specialize in a particular area, you may get the kind of specialization you want if you opt for something in social work. Right. So I think that's a decision you will have to make. There is much to be said for doing CFS if you want to go in the direction where you have multiple inputs. And there's much to be said for social work if you want to specialize in something. So, it just depends, as I said, on your goals.
Absolutely.
And Emily, we can talk more about this outside of this.
For sure.
But I'll tell you the same thing that I told Rachel. It doesn't hurt to apply to multiple types of programs. And I applied to psych programs for doctoral programs. I applied to education programs, CFS, human development. So my advice still stands. The best way to see what's going to provide you what you need is be able to talk to faculty, get a good idea of what that program has to offer. So I would suggest keeping your options open for now, especially if you're not positive which direction you want to choose.
Yeah, totally agree. I think most of us applied. I applied to a variety of different programs. So
did you apply to different like programs within all of UTK, or did you go to like UTK, different
It
schools?
depends. Every university is different. I know that there were some universities that only allowed you to apply to one program. I don't know if Tennessee is one of those, but I did come across a couple of universities where you had to apply to only one program.
Okay. Thank you so
And I
much.
think, and as I don't know who put this in the chat, about
Megan did.
Megan put it in the chat that you can do courses outside of CFS. Certainly you have a few electives that you can do in social work. So the thing is really dependent on what you need, because if you come to CFS and do your electives in social work, maybe you will have enough. But again, it depends on your needs.
Right. That's important. Yeah, I forgot about the like electives, so you can kind of bounce around and take each.
Yeah, you can. So like me, all of my electives are practically in qualitative research, because I want to specialize in that. And so I just packed my program with electives from qualitative research. And then I'm doing the certificate in qualitative research. So I'm coming out with that qualification plus the PhD.
Right.
So my program was tailored to my needs.
Mhm. Awesome. Well, I think that's all the questions I have. So thank you for taking 24 extra minutes. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
All right.
12 hours, Emily.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Thank you.
Thank you again, everyone.
We did it.
Thank you, Megan.
Lisa!
Yeah, Megan really was the driving
again.
force behind this. Thank you, Megan.
I think it was great. I think
Megan, it was good to meet you. I had been hearing your name so much. Megan Cheney.
Oh, I don't know
I know
why.
what you look like.
When I joined this department, there was like 10 Megans, because there was two front office workers that were Megan, and there was like 3 grads. I was like, okay, this is an overwhelming number of Megans. And I moved into a subdivision with 5 other Megans out of 20 adult women. So I remember thinking, like, I didn't think my name was that common.
Wrong emails all the time.
Yep. Well, I think this was great.
Done,
We ended up
Megan.
with 18, 19 students, you know, in our group, and I think it was our first, and it was a success. Good job,
I'm very
everyone.
impressed.
Thank
As
you so
somebody
much.
who's flying, well done. I'm very jealous. I'll get Tyler to move us back.
Please do.
Okay, well, it was great to see all of you. Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Good to see you.
Bye.